Hey guys, welcome to lesson 13. So this one is not going to be as coding intensive as the last couple have been with loops, but this is a little bit more of a knowledge thing. So what we're going to be talking about first is called ASCII, and it's spelled like capital ASCII, and it's just pronounced ASCII. It's an alternate code. It stands for American Standard Code for Information Exchange, where you basically assign a numerical value for pretty much everything. So the ones that you're going to have to memorize is that 0 is 48, 9 is 57, because this pretty much is self-explanatory, because like 1 is 49, 2 is 50. So if you know to start with 0 at 48, you'll be good. Capital A is 65, which you'll also have to memorize, and then all the capital numbers follow that, or all the capital letters follow that. Lowercase a is 97. So those are the major three you're going to have to memorize there, if you could remember that all of the rest of the letters go beyond that. If you look in Appendix D in your book, which is on page 450, you'll see all the things that go to the ASCII character. So these are all of the addresses for things and what their decimal number would be. So like for this one, 0 through 9 is 48 through 57. The capital letters and the lowercase letters. So if you're ever stuck on something and you need to remember and you hopefully have your major three, so 0 is 48, capital A is 65, and lowercase a is 97. So other than that, this little reference is here for you. All right, now that you have ASCII done, we're going to start a new Java project, call it lesson 13. And then inside of it, we're going to make a new class and call it lesson 13 for your public static void main. So what we're going to do now that the ASCII, it's something you just need to get a little familiar with. But in the meantime, while you kind of conquer the ASCII, we're going to talk a little bit more about strings and characters. In your block code, and then we'll move on. All right, so the major difference between string and character is one letter and string is a bunch of them. So you can't say like string, a string, declare it here, then say char a equals a string. All right, doesn't like it. It's not acceptable. You cannot store a string as a character. All right, so what if you had string equals lunch? All right, it doesn't like that. Remember, when you are declaring a string, you need to put it in quotes. All right, so what if we had char a equals a? Notice how it also has an arrow over here. Because characters don't get quotes, characters get single apostrophes. You also can't store a character into a string. So if we had this line up here, so char a, I'm going to put it, see char a, and then we said string equals a, we can't do that either. So characters are characters, strings are strings, you can't go back and forth. All right, so I'm going to make a note. So can't store string as character, can't store character as string. Strings get quotes. Char gets apostrophes. All right, so I'm going to delete my code up here, delete my comment then. Okay. So we're going to come down to write a code. So it's going to be int x equals 1. We're going to say char a equals capital A. And I want you to remember in the back of your mind, capital A is 65. So now when we come down, we can say int y equals x plus a, which would think would be illegal because it's adding a number and a character. So that does seem a little odd, but since that's really a 65, we can do that. So what's going to store in y is that 1 plus 65, so it should be a 66. So let's test it. Write a system.out.println, and we're going to print y. All right, run your code, and prints a 66. All right, so let's test something else. So come on down the line, and we're going to say int z equals a. So before, we couldn't have characters equal to strings, but because of ASCII, we can have characters equal to integers. So I'm going to copy line 19. We're going to print z. So here it should print 66, and here it should print 65. So let's test. 66 and 65. All right, so what if we tried going backwards? So here we went from a character to an int. Can we go from an int to a character? And then say here ch equals a. All right, so that is an error. One of the things you need to remember is that integers can go up to 2 million, but characters can only go up to 65,000. So there are definite differences between the two. So because all the characters can fit into integers, you can save a character as an integer. But since there's so many more integers than there are characters, you cannot make an integer a character. But if you recall, we have a little thing called casting that we can use. So what you'll have to do is tell this a it's no longer an integer, you're forcing it to be a character. Whenever you cast, it should look like what you're changing it into. So char ch equals char a. So now, if you do a system.out.print and you print ch, it's going to cause an error. Let's take a look. All right, so if you take a look here, it says we renamed A. There's already an A up there. So let's make this guy B. And we'll say char B. Now we don't have an error. So let's run it. And look, 75 corresponds to capital K. If we put in 65, it's going to give you capital A, which is one of the ones I made you memorize. So yay, it works. All right, so what if, you remember back when we learned char at, you have a string and you just have to have a character from it. Like, say you want to write a name in reverse, or you just need to get a character or some other reason. So if you have string s is equal to, say, capital W, if you use character, so let's see, A and B, so let's use C. Character C equals S because that was our string. We use a method of string called a char at. And remember, for indexing, this first letter here in any string is index 0. So since there's only one, you can put a 0 there. So we can take a character from the string. What if we want to go backwards? So we have here T equals X. And remember, for characters, it's single quotes, not the double quotes. So it's the apostrophes, not the quotes. So this is actually very subtle, the way you do this. So you would say like string T equals, then double quotes, plus your character. And then that should run. All right, so I'm going to go back and put in some comments here just so I can keep my notes straight. So the first thing that we did today is we turned char into int. The second thing that we did is we forced, so cast int as character, get character from a string. And the last thing we did was turn character into a string. All right, so if you look in your book on page 64, there's this thing called What Are You? So if you guys remember back when we learned the math class, so it was like the math.square root, math.pow, all that good stuff. There's another class called character, so you can run tests on the characters you insert. So you can ask things like, are you a digit? Pop in A. If the character is a digit, then it comes back true. If it's not, it's false. So you can run these tests. You can ask if you're a letter or a digit. So you could say, are you a letter? If it is a letter, by running the character class, it's true. So basically this right here in the parentheses is a Boolean test. You can ask if it's a letter or a digit. So one could be a digit or it could be a letter, so it both return true. Are you white space? So white space basically checks for a space most of the time. Sometimes it can be a new line, sometimes it's a tab. So white space can mean a whole bunch of things. You could test for that. You can test for upper and lower case also, just by running this Boolean argument here. All right, so I'm going to go back in the default and I'm going to create a new class for this, and we're going to call it changing case. Click your public seg void main, put in your block code at the top, and reorganize your brackets. We're going to start a new code. So char ch equals e. All right, and then we're going to come down and we're going to change it to capital. So we're going to be using that character method. So we're going to rename our new character. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just using ch and x. So character dot to uppercase, and then we want to put ch in there because that's the variable we're going to make uppercase. We're going to test our result by printing. We're going to print x. So I know you're looking at it and you're like, well, here's ch. We're changing ch. We're setting capitalized ch equal to x. So that's why we're going to print it. So let's run it. And it prints capital E. It works. All right, so let's do it again. I'm going to copy this whole code, come down a couple lines so I can visually see a difference. We're going to change it. So we're going to make this a capital F, and instead of to uppercase, we're going to say to lowercase. We also have to change some of our variable names. So let's make that apple. We're going to make this apple. We're going to make this y. We want to print y at the end. And it's not real happy. Let's see why. We put in an extra parenthesis here. Now it should work. So let's play it. And it does. Now obviously these aren't the only two methods of the character class. So two uppercase and two lowercase are just a drop in the bucket of things we can do with characters. But that's all we're going to cover for right now. So for lesson 13, you have a set of questions to answer, but you don't have any programs. So make sure you upload both Changing Case and lesson 13 to Moodle along with the questions. Good luck!